You spend more energy worrying about outcomes than creating them. You rehearse disasters that never arrive. You calculate risks that dissolve under action. While you spiral through imaginary scenarios, opportunities slip past like smoke through trembling fingers. Machiavelli would call this the amateur's mistake, confusing activity with achievement, anxiety with preparation. The prince who rules his realm doesn't waste nights staring at ceilings, obsessing over variables beyond his control. He identifies what he can influence, acts on those elements, then sleeps soundly while others lie awake inventing problems. This is the paradox that separates leaders from followers, winners from warriors. The moment you stop needing to control everything is the moment everything begins aligning with your will. Not through mysticism or wishful thinking, but through the cold mathematics of focus and strategic detachment. Today, you discover why worry is the enemy of power, how anxiety destroys judgment, and the precise mental framework that transforms nervous energy into decisive action. By the end, you'll understand what Machiavelli knew, that the mind consumed by worry becomes enslaved to fear, while the mind focused on influence becomes the architect of reality. The transformation begins when you realize that everything you worry about is either within your control or utterly beyond it. Only one category deserves your attention. Worry operates on a fundamental lie. That mental rehearsal of disaster somehow prevents it. You believe that by imagining every way things could fail, you're somehow preparing for success. But preparation and anxiety are opposite forces. Preparation moves towards solutions. Anxiety circles around problems. Machiavelli understood this distinction viscerally. In The Prince, he wrote about fortuna, the unpredictable forces that shape human events. Lesser men exhausted themselves trying to predict and control every variable. They built elaborate contingency plans for scenarios that never materialized, while missing the simple actions that would have secured their position. The strategic mind operates differently. It asks not, what if everything goes wrong, but what can I control right now? It doesn't waste energy on imaginary futures, but invests attention in present influence. This isn't denial, it's precision. The worried mind scatters its power across 1,000 hypothetical problems. The strategic mind concentrates its power on the few variables that matter. Consider your current anxieties. Strip away the stories, the drama, the emotional amplification. What remains? Usually a simple question. What specific action can I take today to improve this situation? That question has an answer. The worry surrounding it is just noise. Machiavelli observed that effective princes shared a common trait. They could act decisively in uncertainty. They didn't need complete information to make sound choices. They accepted that perfect knowledge was impossible and acted on sufficient knowledge instead. This ability to move forward without guarantees is what separated rulers from advisors, leaders from followers. Behind most worry lies a hidden perfectionism, the belief that you must orchestrate perfect outcomes through perfect foresight. This perfectionism masquerades as diligence, but actually represents a profound arrogance, the assumption that your worry somehow influences events beyond your reach. The worried mind operates from scarcity of time, resources, opportunities, goodwill. It hoards attention like a miser hoards coins, spreading thin protection across imaginary threats. The strategic mind operates from abundance of options, solutions, ways to respond and adapt. When you stop worrying about perfect outcomes, you start creating better ones. Not because worry was preventing success, but because worry was consuming the mental energy required for effective action. Every hour spent catastrophizing is an hour not spent building, connecting, solving, or creating. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. People respond to your visible confidence more than your hidden competence. When anxiety shows in your decisions, the hesitation, the over-explanation, the desperate seeking of reassurance, others sense uncertainty and begin to doubt your capabilities. The most counterintuitive truth about achieving your goals is that attachment to specific outcomes often prevents them. Not because the universe responds to your desires, but because desperation creates tunnel vision, poor judgment, and weak negotiating positions. When you need something too badly, you telegraph that need. Others sense your desperation and either take advantage of it or lose respect for your strength. When you want something but can walk away from it, you negotiate from power. The difference isn't in your circumstances, it's in your mental posture. Machiavelli demonstrated this principle repeatedly in his analysis of successful rulers. Those who clung desperately to power through anxiety and control often lost it. Those who held power lightly, ready to adapt or release when necessary, maintained it longer. The grip that's too tight strangles what it tries to protect. This detachment isn't indifference, it's strategic flexibility. You care deeply about your objectives while remaining emotionally unattached to any specific path toward them. When one approach fails, you pivot smoothly to another. When circumstances shift, you adapt without internal resistance. The worried mind creates rigid plans and panics when reality doesn't conform. The strategic mind creates flexible frameworks and adapts when reality provides new information. One fights against change, the other flows with it while maintaining direction. Understanding worry as a biological process rather than a rational activity helps explain why logic alone can't eliminate it. Worry is your ancient brain's attempt to solve modern problems using prehistoric software. The same neural pathways that helped early humans survive physical threats now misfire on abstract challenges like career advancement or relationship dynamics. Your brain can't distinguish between a charging predator and a difficult conversation scheduled for next week. Both trigger the same biochemical cascade. Stress hormones flood your system, peripheral vision narrows, creative thinking shuts down. This response was useful when threats were immediate and physical. It becomes counterproductive when challenges require sustained thought and social intelligence. Chronic worry literally rewires your brain for anxiety. Neural pathways strengthened through repetition become highways, making worried thoughts easier to access and harder to interrupt. The worried mind trains itself for worry, creating self-perpetuating cycles of mental distress. But neuroplasticity works both ways. The same principles that create worry patterns can create calm focus. When you consistently redirect attention from catastrophic thinking to present action, you literally reshape your brain's default responses. The strategic mind isn't born, it's built through deliberate practice. Machiavelli succeeded because he trained his attention on variables within his influence while remaining intellectually curious about forces beyond it. He studied patterns, prepared for contingencies, but didn't exhaust himself trying to control the uncontrollable. Attention is your most finite resource. Unlike money, time, or energy, you can't save attention for later use or borrow it from future moments. Every minute of worry is attention you'll never recover, mental capital invested in imaginary problems rather than real solutions. The worried mind operates like a poorly managed investment portfolio, scattered across hundreds of low-probability risks, generating anxiety without security. The strategic mind consolidates attention into high-impact areas where focused effort produces measurable results. This economic view of attention reveals why successful people often seem cold or detached. They're not emotionally impaired, they're financially disciplined with their mental resources. They refuse to spend precious attention on problems they can't solve, people they can't influence, or outcomes they can't control. Machiavelli's analysis of effective leadership consistently returned to this theme. Leaders must be selective about where they invest their concern. The prince who worries about everything accomplishes nothing. The prince who identifies the few variables that determine success and focuses exclusively on those variables shapes his destiny. Most worry stems from the illusion that mental activity equals actual control. You believe that by thinking about problems constantly, you're somehow working on solutions. But thinking and problem solving are different cognitive processes. Worry is thinking trapped in circles. Problem solving is thinking that moves toward resolution. The illusion of control tricks you into believing that your anxiety serves a purpose, that by maintaining vigilance over all possible threats, you're protecting yourself. In reality, this hypervigilance exhausts your mental resources and impairs your ability to respond effectively when genuine challenges arise. Machiavelli distinguished between preparation and preoccupation. Preparation involves identifying likely scenarios, developing contingency plans, building skills and relationships that increase your options. Preoccupation involves endless mental rehearsal of problems without corresponding action. The prepared mind is calm because it has done what can be done. The preoccupied mind is anxious because it substitutes worry for preparation, mental activity for practical readiness. The psychological architecture of worry reveals why it feels so productive while accomplishing so little. Worry provides the sensation of working on problems without the friction of actual problem solving. It's mental junk food, satisfying in the moment but nutritionally void. Real problem solving requires uncomfortable encounters with uncertainty, incomplete information, and potential failure. Worry avoids these encounters by remaining safely abstract. You can worry about public speaking without ever giving a speech. Worry about starting a business without ever writing a business plan. Worry about difficult conversations without ever having them. This avoidance pattern creates a cruel irony. The more you worry about something, the less likely you are to take action that would resolve it. Worry becomes a substitute for action, a way of feeling engaged with problems while remaining safely distant from solutions. Machiavelli recognized this pattern in failed leaders who confused deliberation with decision-making, planning with execution. He wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." This wasn't cruelty. It was recognition that effective leadership requires making difficult choices rather than endlessly contemplating them. The fear underlying most worry isn't fear of specific outcomes, it's fear of responsibility. Taking action means accepting responsibility for results. Worrying allows you to feel engaged with problems while avoiding the vulnerability of attempting solutions. When you worry about career advancement without updating your skills, you avoid the responsibility of professional development. When you worry about relationships without having honest conversations, you avoid the responsibility of emotional intimacy. When you worry about financial security without creating multiple income streams, you avoid the responsibility of economic independence. This avoidance creates a feedback loop. Worry prevents action. Lack of action creates more legitimate concerns. Increased concerns generate more worry. Breaking this cycle requires accepting that imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty is the only certainty in human affairs. He wrote, "He who establishes a tyranny and does not kill Brutus, or he who establishes a free government and does not kill the sons of Brutus, will only reign a short time." The successful leader doesn't eliminate uncertainty, he develops comfort with operating within it. This comfort with uncertainty becomes a competitive advantage because most people are paralyzed by ambiguity. While others hesitate, waiting for perfect information that never arrives, you move forward with sufficient information. While others debate, you test. While others plan, you adapt based on real feedback. The strategic mind treats uncertainty as information rather than threat. Unknown variables become data points to gather, rather than dangers to fear. This shift from defensive to curious transforms how you approach challenging situations. When facing a difficult negotiation, the worried mind obsesses over all the ways it could go wrong. The strategic mind identifies what information would be most useful and designs questions to gather it. The difference isn't in confidence levels, it's in focused direction. Machiavelli's concept of virtue captures this quality perfectly. Virtue isn't virtue in the moral sense. It's the skill of responding effectively to whatever circumstances arise. It's competence in the face of complexity, grace under pressure, adaptability without losing direction. The transition from worried to strategic requires rewiring your relationship with control. Most people believe they should control outcomes and let processes take care of themselves. This backwards approach generates chronic anxiety because outcomes depend on countless variables beyond individual influence. The strategic approach reverses this. Control processes completely while releasing attachment to specific outcomes. Focus all attention on actions you can take, decisions you can make, skills you can develop, relationships you can build. Let outcomes emerge from excellent processes, rather than trying to force processes to deliver predetermined outcomes. This shift eliminates most anxiety because your sense of security comes from your ability to respond rather than your ability to predict. You don't need to know what challenges will arise. You know you can handle whatever emerges because you've built the capabilities and relationships necessary for effective response. Machiavelli demonstrated this principle throughout his political career. He couldn't control which factions would rise to power, but he could control his knowledge of political dynamics. He couldn't control when opportunities would arise, but he could control his readiness to capitalize on them. The most sophisticated understanding of worry reveals it as misplaced problem-solving energy. The same mental capacity that generates anxiety can generate solutions when properly directed. The key is distinguishing between productive and unproductive thinking patterns. Productive thinking moves toward resolution, identifying problems clearly, generating potential solutions, testing approaches, adapting based on feedback. Unproductive thinking moves in circles, rehearsing problems without seeking solutions, imagining disasters without planning responses, creating elaborate scenarios without taking simple actions. The transition happens when you catch yourself in unproductive thinking and ask, what would productive thinking look like right now? This question redirects mental energy from problem amplification to solution generation. Machiavelli's strategic thinking exemplified this redirection. When faced with political threats, he didn't waste time imagining all possible disasters. He analyzed power dynamics, identified leverage points, developed contingency plans, built alliances. His thinking served action rather than anxiety. The final integration requires understanding that worry and strategic thinking use the same raw materials, attention, analysis, projection into the future, but combine them differently. Worry takes current problems and amplifies them into future catastrophes. Strategic thinking takes current capabilities and projects them into future opportunities. Both involve mental simulation, but with opposite orientations. Worry simulates failure to avoid it. Strategic thinking simulates success to create it. The difference isn't in mental capacity, it's in directional choice. When you consistently choose strategic simulation over disaster rehearsal, you literally train your mind for success rather than failure. Your mental default shifts from what could go wrong to what could go right. This isn't positive thinking, it's practical orientation toward possibility rather than problem. Machiavelli's enduring influence comes from this orientation. He didn't ignore problems. He analyzed them systematically to identify solutions. He didn't pretend obstacles didn't exist. He studied them to find pathways through. His mind moved naturally toward opportunity because he trained it to seek advantage rather than avoid disadvantage. The practical application begins immediately. Every time worry arises, pause and ask, is this thinking moving me toward solutions or away from them? If the answer is away from solutions, redirect toward action. What one small step could I take right now to improve this situation? This redirection becomes automatic with practice. Your mind learns to recognize the difference between productive and unproductive thinking patterns. You develop immunity to anxiety spirals because you catch them early and redirect toward agency. The transformation from worried to strategic isn't about eliminating concern. It's about upgrading how you process concern. You still notice problems, but you treat them as information rather than threats. You still face uncertainty, but you approach it with curiosity rather than fear. Machiavelli's greatest insight was that human nature remains constant while circumstances change continuously. The worried mind exhausts itself trying to control changing circumstances. The strategic mind focuses on leveraging constant human nature within changing circumstances. This focus creates tremendous advantage because while others waste energy fighting reality, you use that same energy to work with reality. While others resist change, you surf it. While others fear uncertainty, you mine it for opportunity. The deeper mechanism behind this transformation involves understanding how worry actually weakens your position in any competitive situation. When you worry excessively about outcomes, you send subtle signals of insecurity that others detect and exploit. Your body language changes, your voice carries tension, your decision-making becomes rushed or overly cautious. These signals communicate weakness to opponents and uncertainty to allies. People naturally gravitate toward confident leadership and distance themselves from anxious energy. The worried leader finds their influence diminishing, not because of external threats, but because of internal turmoil that manifests externally. Machiavelli observed this dynamic repeatedly in political contexts. Leaders who projected calm competence during crises maintained their power base. Those who visibly struggled with anxiety found their support eroding even when their policies were sound. People follow strength, not intelligence. They trust calm more than cleverness. This understanding reveals why strategic detachment becomes so powerful. When you're not emotionally attached to specific outcomes, you can negotiate from strength. You can make decisions based on logic rather than desperation. You can walk away from bad deals because your identity isn't invested in any particular result. The worried mind makes every decision feel life or death important. The strategic mind recognizes that most decisions are reversible. Most failures are recoverable. Most setbacks are temporary. This perspective allows for better risk assessment and more creative problem solving. Machiavelli's famous observation that it is better to be impetuous than cautious reflects this principle. He wasn't advocating recklessness. He was noting that bold action often succeeds where careful planning fails. Not because boldness is inherently superior, but because it eliminates the paralysis that comes from over-analysis. The biological reality underlying worry also explains why it's so persistent and difficult to overcome through willpower alone. Your nervous system evolved to prioritize survival over happiness, safety over success. The same mechanisms that kept your ancestors alive in dangerous environments now sabotage your performance in competitive environments. Understanding this biological inheritance allows you to work with your nature rather than against it.
Instead of trying to eliminate worry, you redirect its energy. The same alertness that generates anxiety can generate opportunity awareness. The same forward thinking that creates catastrophic scenarios can create strategic planning. Machiavelli succeeded partly because he understood how to channel natural human tendencies rather than fight them. He didn't pretend that fear, ambition, and self-interest didn't exist. He incorporated them into his strategic calculations.
This realism made his advice practical rather than idealistic. The transition to strategic thinking requires developing what psychologists call metacognition, awareness of your own thinking processes. When you can observe your mind creating worry spirals, you can interrupt them. When you notice anxiety building, you can redirect that energy toward productive activity. This awareness takes practice because most people are unconscious of their thought patterns. They experience worry as something that happens to them rather than something they're actively creating. Recognizing your role in generating anxiety is the first step toward generating different mental states. Machiavelli's analytical approach to human behavior provides a model for this self-awareness. He studied his own reactions as carefully as he studied others. He recognized his biases, acknowledged his limitations, and designed systems to compensate for his weaknesses. The strategic mind develops through similar self-study. You learn your worry triggers, identify your anxiety patterns, recognize your avoidance behaviors. This knowledge allows you to intervene before worry spirals become overwhelming. The most practical application involves creating what could be called worry protocols, systematic ways of processing concerns when they arise. Instead of allowing anxiety to run wild, you channel it through structured analysis. When worry emerges, immediately categorize it. Is this about something that could happen in the next week, month, or year? Is it about something you can control directly, influence indirectly, or not affect at all? Is it about a specific problem with concrete solutions, or a vague fear without clear definition? This categorization transforms shapeless anxiety into manageable components. Immediate concerns get immediate attention. Distant possibilities get filed for periodic review. Controllable elements get action plans. Uncontrollable factors get acceptance. Machiavelli used similar systematic approaches to political analysis. He broke complex situations into component parts, analyzed each element separately, then synthesized them into strategic plans. This methodology prevented him from becoming overwhelmed by the complexity of political dynamics. The practice of strategic thinking also involves developing comfort with incomplete information and uncertain outcomes. Most people wait for certainty before acting, but certainty rarely comes in competitive environments. Those who can act effectively on partial information gain significant advantages over those who hesitate. This doesn't mean acting recklessly or ignoring available data. It means making decisions based on sufficient information rather than perfect information. It means being comfortable with calculated risks rather than demanding guaranteed outcomes. Machiavelli's career demonstrates this principle repeatedly. He made political alliances based on partial information about other parties' intentions. He developed policies without complete data about their potential consequences. He succeeded not because he had perfect foresight, but because he could act decisively despite uncertainty. The neurological research behind decision-making under stress confirms Machiavelli's intuitive understanding. When you're anxious about outcomes, your prefrontal cortex, responsible for complex reasoning, goes offline. Your limbic system takes over, creating fight or flight responses inappropriate for social and professional challenges. Strategic detachment keeps your prefrontal cortex online during stressful situations. You maintain access to creative problem-solving, nuanced judgment, and sophisticated social intelligence. This neurological advantage translates directly into better performance in challenging circumstances. The worried mind operates from a state of chronic stress that impairs memory formation, reduces pattern recognition, and decreases cognitive flexibility. The strategic mind maintains optimal arousal levels that enhance learning, improve decision-making, and increase adaptability. Machiavelli's sustained effectiveness throughout his career reflects this neurological optimization. He remained intellectually sharp under pressure because he didn't allow emotional attachment to outcomes to hijack his cognitive resources. His detachment preserved his analytical capabilities when others were compromised by stress. The social dynamics of worry create additional disadvantages beyond personal performance issues. Anxious energy is contagious. When you're worried, others around you become more anxious. This creates negative feedback loops in teams, relationships, and organizations. Strategic calm has the opposite effect. When you remain centered during turbulent situations, others draw strength from your stability. Your emotional state becomes an anchor that prevents group panic and enables collective problem-solving. Machiavelli understood that a leader's primary responsibility is maintaining the psychological stability of their organization or alliance. When leaders panic, organizations collapse. When leaders remain steady, organizations find ways to survive and thrive through difficulties. The final element in this transformation involves understanding that strategic thinking is ultimately about optimizing for long-term success rather than short-term comfort. Worry often serves short-term emotional needs. It makes you feel like you're doing something about problems even when you're not. Strategic thinking prioritizes effectiveness over feelings. This shift requires accepting temporary discomfort in service of lasting results. It means choosing difficult conversations over comfortable silence, challenging projects over safe assignments, calculated risks over guaranteed mediocrity. It means trading the illusion of safety that worry provides for the genuine security that competence creates. Machiavelli understood that temporary discomfort often leads to permanent advantage, while seeking constant comfort often leads to eventual disadvantage. He was willing to be unpopular in the short term to be effective in the long term. He chose strategic truth over comfortable fiction. The choice is always present. Will you spend your mental energy worrying about what might happen or creating what should happen? Will you rehearse disaster or design victory? Will you be a victim of circumstances or an architect of outcomes? This choice becomes easier as you experience the practical benefits of strategic thinking over worry. When you see how much more you accomplish with focused attention, how much better your relationships become with calm presence, how much more respect you command with quiet confidence, the motivation to continue becomes self-reinforcing. The transformation from worried to strategic thinking isn't just about feeling better. It's about performing better, relating better, leading better. It's about becoming someone who creates solutions rather than amplifies problems. Someone who brings calm to chaos rather than adding stress to difficult situations. Transformation waits for no perfect moment or external permission. It begins the instant you decide to break free from your past. The change starts now, in this very moment. The choice is yours. You can cling to familiar patterns that have kept you confined, or you can embrace the creative discomfort of rising above the average. Remember, no one will make this decision for you. Do not wait for another sign or permission. The power to transform is already in your hands. The journey from worried to strategic starts here. Choose wisely. Your future depends on it.